Okay. So today we are going to study HTML forms, right? So what is HTML form? Rather than HTML form, so what is form? As you know, can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, can you all hear me? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what is form? Actually, a HTML form allow user to interact with web documents, right? So, what is web document? What is web document? So, user can interact with the web documents through the HTML forms, right? So, basically, HTML form provide graphical user interface, right, to control for a special purpose called data entry, right? So, if you want to enter data through the GUI, we can use HTML forms, right? So that means the form simply collect data from the user, right? So this is an example for an form. So if you consider form, there are several ways to collect data. So, for example, so that is depend on the field name, that depend on the field that you are going to collect data. So, for example, if it is name is a set of text or set of strings. We call string, right? So, if it is a date of birth, so that is a date, right? So, if it is gender, so we know there are two inputs, right? So, which can be predefined, right? So if you want to fill a country, so we can have a set of so we call a list of countries. So out of the list, we can select one of them, right? So if it is address, so we call that is a set of text which are different than the name, right? That means that there are a number of lines, right? So if it is hobby, we can select whatever predefined hobbies, right? So likewise, so depending on the fields that you consider, field name here, field means name, date of birth, gender, right? So depend on the field, so this input type is different, right? So depend on the field, the input type may be different, right? So we have to consider what is the field and what's the most appropriate input type, right? So in HTML, we call that is input controller, right? Okay. So in here it says there are number of ways to do this, right? So but we have to consider the most appropriate input control, right? So here there is a tag called form, which we which can be used to insert form into the web document, right? So the form tag has the following minimum format. So that means that there is a special format for the form tag. If you want to define form, there should be an identifier for the form. Right? That means in a one particular web page, there can have a number of forms. Right? So there may be some, one or two or a number of forms. Right? So since there are a number of forms, we have to identify a specific. We have to identify a one particular form by specific name, or we call there should be a unique identifier, right? And so if it is a form which is used to collect data, the data should be sent to the particular another web page so that they can process it, right? So we have to mention the action. Action means that we are to send the data, right? So we know that. So if you want to specify a particular location in a web server, so in the internet or in a network, especially internet, so you have to use a URL, right? So that's how we mention the location. And there are a number of methods. So yeah, actually there are two methods to send the form data. We have to mention that method as well. There are two methods we call get and post, right? So we'll discuss what is the difference between get and post method. So we have to mention either get or post, right? So these are the attributes within the form tag, right? So it says the attribute provide the action attribute provide a URL to suitable form handler. So form handler means the handler which process the data accordingly, and the method attribute specify how the form data sent to the a particular or the specified action URL. So it may be get or post, and the tag has several other attributes as well. So for example, encrypt, target, accept. So those are optional attributes, right? Okay. Now we can use this form tag to design a form, right? So as I said earlier, so depending on the field type, we have to define, we have to find, or we have to select what is the suitable input control, right? So within the input tag, right? So in order to insert input controller, there is a tag called input, right? So within the input tag, there are a number of attributes we can we have to define it. The first one is name or ID, right? So which is used to uniquely identify a specific input control, right? So if it is an input tag, there should be a name or ID, right? So which is used to uniquely identify that particular input control, right? And uh, as I said earlier, so depending on the field type, so we have to select what is the input control. So if it is name, address, so on those fields we can use text input. So if it is a male, gender, so we can use radio button, right? Likewise, so depending on the field type, so we have to select the appropriate input control, right? Okay. Now I'll demonstrate how to create a form in HTML, right? Okay. Then I'll use basic text editor, Notepad, right? Okay. Now I think you can see this text editor. Can you see this Notepad text editor? Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Right. You know the first tag is document type, the definition of the document, and the root tag is HTML, and the closing tag. Then I save this one. I create a folder called say day two. Then I save this one as form1.html. Okay. So this is the basic text editor, Notepad. So I use this basic structure of the web page. So this header section. So within the header section, we can have a title, right? So I use the form what. So this is my title. So then next one is body section. Okay. Okay. Now I'm going to have a form, right? So I'm going to collect, say, student information. So I'll put heading one, say student information. Then I use the closing tag. Okay. So if you want to insert that form, we have to use the form tag. Sorry, form. And so there are three main attributes within the form tag. First one is name, right? Say student info, right? So for the time being, I keep action as empty, and then the method. So as I said earlier, there are two methods: get and post, right? So I use a method called get. So this is the form tag. So this is the closing form tag. Okay. Then I save this form1.html, right? Okay. So shall I share the screen like this. Just wait. Okay. Okay, I'll share the screen. Okay, now you can see the text editor as well as my folder, right? Okay, then I open this web page, student information, right? Okay, can you all see this screen, the source code and the web page? Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now I'm going to insert form, right? So this is the form tag, right? Okay, let's see. The first one is say student name, right? Then I put the label. So this is called label, student name. Then name is a set of strings, right? So collection of string, right? So as I said earlier, so here, so if you want to input a set of text, so we can have a input type called text, right? So there is a tag called input and the type, right? Type should be text, right? Text. And we have to have a name for this tag, right? So I'll say student name, right? So by default, there is no value for this student tag. So student name, then I'll set a value is empty. Then I save this. Now I refresh this web page. Now you can see. So this is called text box, right? So this is called text box, right? So this is the label. So this is the text box. So this is the input controller. So in this case, input controller is text. Input controller is text, right? Then next one. Next one, say date of birth. Date of birth, right? So what should be the input text input controller? So here input control is say date. So if it is date of birth, so it should be date, right? So I'll use say date of birth, DOB, right? So initial value is empty, right? Then I save this and I open the web page. Now you can see, right? So through the calendar, we can insert date. So since the input control is date, right? So they will provide a calendar. Now this should be in next line. How can you move this field to the next line? How can you move this particular field to the next line? Here we can have what? So what is the tag which we can use in here? So that's these two in two line. Yeah, most of them correct. Break tag, right? So you can use the break tag like this, right? Okay, so that's about the date of birth. And then next one is gender. Let's say gender, right? So if it is gender, input type, so we can have a radio button. There's a button called radio button, right? So here name is gender, right? So once if you select this particular option, we can set a value for this, right? So here we can set a value. So when user select this one, when selecting this particular radio button, we can have a value called say male. Then here in front of this controller, we can have a label called male, right? Similarly, here we can have a label called female. Then here input type is radio, right? So here if you want, so I'll show you. Here we can say gender 2, right? So if it is gender 1 and 2, so this one is say gender 1 and this one is say gender 2. And then, so once you select this one, we can set a value called female, right? So once you select this one, we can set a value as male. So once you select this one, we can set a value as female. Okay, now let's see how it is applicable, right? So in here, also we can have a break tag. So after the date of birth, we can have a break tag so that this gender field what's the next line, right? Like this, right? So now user can select both. Is it possible? User can select both male and female. So how can we, what you call, deny this selection? How can you block this selection? So is it possible? Yes or no? This one. Who says this is impossible? Who says this is possible? Yeah, actually, user can select, user uh, should be select male or female, not both. So in order to do that, we can have one identifier for both. Then here we can set name, uh, sorry, gender as a name of this input controller. At the same time, we can select gender as the name of the next controller as well. So then gender, this name have only, they can have only one value. So in here, so st name can have a value, right? So once the user input particular value for this controller, this text box, that value is assigned to the uh, name controller. So once the user select date for a date of birth, that date assigned to the DOB. So in here also, now user can select only one value because name is, or the ID or the name for both input controller is same. Now user can select either male or female, not both. Did you understand it? Did you understand? So if you want to select, if you want to set only one value for gender, then we can have a same name for both controllers. Otherwise, user can select both, right? So that's how we block or the deny selecting both value for the gender, right? Okay, so that's about the gender. Next one is say student want to select say country. So let's see other than the country is the faculty, right? So I'll select say faculty, faculty. So can you define a number of faculties at once? So that means before user or before student input the faculty. So if you want to set faculty, so you can have a input controller like this, right? So we can have an input controller like this, right? So just uh, 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 we can have an input controller like this, right? So then user or the student has to fill the faculty name. But so if it is faculty, we know what are the faculties available in the university, right? So that means the value for the faculty can be defined, right? So in those type of situation, we can have a selection box or we call a drop down list. So let's see how to insert drop down list. So there's a tag called select, select, right? Here we can have a name for the select tag. Let's say faculty, right? Then we can have several options, right? Option. So first option is say arts faculty, arts, right? Then, so this is the first option. Then I close this option, right? So once the user select this particular option, we can set a value for this option. So I'll set say arts, right? So next option, right? Say option value. Say in here I put a label called say allied health science AHS. So once user set select this one, I can have a value called AHS for this particular option, right? So likewise, we can set number of options and then we can have a closing tag of the selection, selection, select actually, right? Okay, so we can align like this. So within the select tab, we can have several options. Then I save this. Yeah, here we can have a break tag. So at the end of the gender controller, I can have a break tag. Now user can select either faculty out of this list. So if you want, you can have a number of options in here, right? So in here I have only two options. So if you want, you can have a number of options like this. So next option, next one, right? So here we can have a label, say science, and then say, so if you use to select this one, I can say science, right? So if you use to select say management, then I can set a value called say NGT, right? So likewise, we can select uh, options out of the given list, right? Then we can replace this, right? So these are the list, right? Then user can select any faculty out of these values, options. We call these options, right? So did you understand that? Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's about the drop down list, right? Okay. Then next one is checkbox, right? Checkboxes. So the field like say hobby, right? So there are number of hobbies, right? So in here, user can select at most one value, right? So actually, user can select either male or female. But the field like hobby, user may select one or more values, right? So in that case, we are not going to use the radio button. Instead of that, we are going to use checkboxes, right? So how can you use checkbox, right? So here I use say label called say hobby, right? Let's say reading. Say first one is called say reading, right? Then this is the label. So here we can have so input type, right? So here we can have a checkbox, right? So we call checkbox, right? And here we can have a name called say hobby one. And so once you select this one, I can say value is reading. Then break. Save this. Now you can see. So this is checkbox. So actually, after the drop down list, we can have break tag. So this is the first hobby, right? So likewise, similarly, user can we can define number of hobbies. Let's say so this is reading, right? So this is reading. So I can define same way. I can use copy of this. So let's start is say traveling, traveling, and then next one is say what else? Watching films, or we can say playing. All right. Likewise. So here this will be two, this will be three, something like that, right? So here, if it is traveling, we can say travel. Just say read. Let's say play. All right. So here I refresh this. Now you can see, right? So user can select at least one, or if it is three, user can select all the options as well, right? So, or user can deselect all the options. So that's how we define uh, checkbox. So I break here as well. Okay, like this, right? Have you got it? Did you understand?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. One student asked, what is the purpose of giving values? So actually, so now we are going to collect data from the user. So if it is student name, user can enter a value. If it is date of birth, user can enter value. So that's why we keep those are empty. So name, the value for the name is empty. value for the date of birth is empty. But user may select this. If user select male or female, either male or female, we have to select the value. So we have to set the value. So otherwise, once user select this one, but the value, if it is not set, right? So if value is not there, then it will pass the null value, right? So once you select a faculty out of this list, then we have to set the value in here also. So once you select either options, then we have to set the value. So that is the purpose of this attribute of value. Here we can set the value. So once in name, so we can't predefine the value for the field like name. Did you understand?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Can you repeat about the radio one? I couldn't catch up the way selecting one option. Yeah. So here, once we set, yeah, I'll explain one more thing, right? So then I'll come to these questions, right? So here, now we have inputs. So how to submit this or how to uh, pass this value to particular page, to particular action. So here we should have a button called submit button, right? So here I put the break tag and here we can have submit button, right? So there's a input type called submit, right? Submit, then we can submit this value, right? So here, actually the value of the submit button is the label of this value, right? So I'll say submit, right? And then this is the one submit button. And then at the same time, we can have a reset button to cancel these inputs, input type. So that's reset. So then say value is say cancel or clear, right? So like this. Okay, now we can have these two buttons, right? And then I save this, right? So here, now you can see here the name input controller. The name input controller. So this is the name of this controller. Student name is T name. Here, let's say DOB. So this is gender, right? So here, these two are empty values. So I'll put a name, say Amar, and then here date 5. Let's say male, and then faculty say HS. So these are the hobbies. Now we know. Keep in mind, student name is Amal, date of birth is May 8th, and then gender is male, faculty is HS. So these are the hobbies. Then when I submit this, you can select, you can see this URL, right? So when I submit this, then you can see, right? So here, these values, right? So the values that I have set are assigned to the name of the text controller. So here st name is name of the input controller, or the name of the name field input controller. Here DOB is name of the date of birth input controller, right? So I'll copy these values, right? So here there are some other names for the input controller as well as values, right? So here now you can see date of birth. So that is the name for the TOB, or the date of birth of the student, right? So the next one, right? So this is the value for date of birth and gender. So gender is name for the gender radio button. So here I'll select, here I have select the value called male, and then here faculty. Faculty is the name for the selection or the drop down list. Then here HS is selected value, and then hobby. Hobby is a field name for the hobby. So here I select two hobbies. Hobby 1 is read, hobby 3 is play, right? So just I copy these values, then I explain again, right? So which will be better, right? So here I select all the name and value. Actually, so if it is form, if it is form is working as say name value pair here. Now you can see, right? So here, yeah, starting from here, right? So here now you can see, right? So here is the name equal Amal. Amal is the value that I have filled. So which is assigned to the name of the student name input controller. So what is the name? ST name. So here initially the value is empty. Then I fill Amal as a student name. That the value Amal is assigned to the variable name, or this is called input controller name of the input control, right? Similarly, the date of birth that I have entered assigned to the name of the gender. Sorry, name of the date of birth input controller here, right? And out of this male and female, right? So there are two values, there are two options that can I have, that can I that which can be selected, right? So here I'll select male. So here I have selected the value option called male. Then according to this selection, right? According to this input controller, once if I select the value called male, the uh, the value set for this controller is male. Then this value assigned to the variable name or the input controller name called gender, right? So there is a unique name for, there is one name for these two controllers. Then we can select or we can set only one value among male and female. So we can't set two values because we have only one name. We have only one name for both controllers, right? So we can have two names, but so once if we have two names for this radio button, then we can set both values, right? So that is the difference between setting one name for both controller and setting two different names for both controller. So once if you say gender 1 and 2, then user can select both male and female, right? We have to deny it. So we can have only one value for these two. So therefore, we select one name for both variables. Have you got it? Did you understand? Yes or no? Yeah. Another question? Are there any question? And then here, selection. So here I select the faculty EHS, then the value EHS is set to the name of the selection faculty. So like this. So value EHS, which is the value that I have selected from the drop-down list, that value is assigned to the name of this drop-down list. Name of the drop-down list is name, right? So in here, so here I use the, here now you can see, right? So here I use the three different names for these controllers, right? So therefore, user can select this one or this one or this one, right? So user can select read, traveling, or the reading, traveling, and play, right? So according to the selection, this value is assigned to the name of the controller, right? So here the name of the controller is hobby one. Actually, in here earlier I select these two values, these two hobbies. Then this value is assigned to hobby one. This value is assigned to hobby three. Then did you understand it? Yes or no? Did you understand? Oh, shall I explain again? So shall I explain again? So do you recommend us to make a note out of lectures or only the PDFs are enough? Yeah, PDFs are enough, right? So by the way, can you all hear me?
Yes, sir. We
Yes,
can
sir.
hear you.
The actually the thing is we have to do the practical, right? So actually note is enough, but that is not enough because we have to do the practicals. So based on these notes, so I'll upload some exercises, right? So during the practical session, so we have to do that, right? So you have to do those exercises and upload the answers, right? So after the practical session, I'll demonstrate how to do those exercises, right? So that's the way we have to follow, right? So otherwise, so this theory or these sessions are not enough, right? So that's the thing, right? Okay. So in here, what I'm going to explain. So if it is a web form, actually form is a pair of name and value, right? So name of the controller is there. So once the user set a value for this controller, that value is assigned to this name of the controller. So once user enter value for the name, that value is assigned to the name of the input controller. So here user enter value called say Amal here. So so all the time the value of this student name is not the Amal. So that's why I keep empty here. So once user enter value for this name input controller, that value is assigned to the name of the input controller, student name. Then here Amal is assigned to the student name. So once user enter value for date of birth, that value is assigned to the name of date of birth input controller. So that is DOB. So here I select the date called August 5th. That date assigned to the name of the date of birth input controller, right? So here I set one name for both radio options. So both options, right? Male and female. Then once you select the value male or the option male or the radio button male, that value is assigned to the a variable called gender. So once you select female as a value, then that value is assigned the name of the gender, name of the female input controller. So since there is only one name, right? So user can select either male or female, right? So next one is drop down list. So here the name for the drop down list is faculty, and then according to the selection we have values, right? So this value is assigned to the drop down list called the name of the drop down list called faculty. So here I select AHS as a faculty, then the value AHS is set assigned to the name of the drop down list, which is faculty, right? So here, so these are the these are the check boxes, not the radio button, sorry. So these are check boxes. So here I have a different name for these three check boxes, hobby 1, hobby 2, and hobby 3. So then user can select this one or this one or this, right? So user can select either options or the either hobbies, right? So user can select this one, not the either. So this one or this one or this one or both or this all the hobbies, right? So likewise, once user select whatever hobby or whatever combination of hobbies, right? So these values are set to the relevant name of the input controllers. Now, have you got it? Did you understand? Yes or no? So, are there any questions? Or now I repeat the same thing again. Did you understand? Yes or no? Is it okay? Okay. So that's about the form. So there are some other input controllers as well, right? So we'll discuss those things at the lecture, right? So that's are the types of fields. Yeah. Now here, now this login or this form is not, we call this is not aligned, right? So it is not aligned. So actually, if it is a form, it should be like this, right? So for example, it should be like this. So here, these are properly aligned, right? So how to align these inputs? How to align these inputs, right? So here, actually, we can use uh, tables, HTML table, to input to align these input controllers. Okay, I'll demonstrate how to use tables to align these input controllers. Right? Okay. So here we can have two columns. Right. So one is for the label, the other one is for the input controller. So I'll insert table. So I'll say border is one. So let's border is one. And here, if you want, you can align center, right? Let's say align, align center. Then here, I close the table tag. Yeah, what's the problem? Should we need to memorize these HTML tags, or is there any easy way to we can never? Yeah, the only thing is we have to practice these things, right? So then it will be automatically uh, keep in memory. So only thing is we can practice these things. So then don't worry about this cram or the memorize these things, right? So just we can practice, and then let's see what will happen, right? So the only thing is we have to use the appropriate tag in the correct location. So that's it, right? So in the table tag, so there are number of attributes. So first one is border, right? So here, how many columns should be there? There should be two columns, right? So then I define say table row, and here I close the first table row, and then within a one particular row we should have two columns. So I insert two table data. So like this, right? So how many rows are there? One, two, three, right? So here, let's see, four, let's see, five, six, seven, eight, and nine. Altogether, nine. So let's see, 10, right? 10 rows, right? So I copy this collection. So there should be 10 rows, right? 10 rows like this, right? Now we can have, say, one, two, three, something like that, right? So here, first one. So this is the first one. In the first one, we have to have a student name. Student name. So this is the label. So this is the label, and then this is the input controller, right? So now we don't need the break tag. So in first row, we can have a student name and input controller, right? So the next one, date of birth, date of birth, and the input controller. This one, right? And then next one, gender. So this is the label, and so these are the input controllers. So male, female. So these two, right? So we don't need the break tag, right? So insert these two, right? Okay, like this, male, female. And then next one, so this is the faculty, right? So which is the list, the drop down list, and this is the drop down list here. Let's see. So yeah, that should be better. Yeah. So this is the table data, right? So I'll upload this source code, right? So here, so this is these are the options, right? So for the time being, just remove these two, then it will be easy, right? So if you want, you can keep like this, right? Okay, so this is the faculty, and then next one is hobby, hobby. So that's the label. So here hobby, and then next one is number of hobbies, right? So actually here, if you want, you can use break tags. Otherwise, it don't. So here I keep space like this here, right? And then next one, these two, submit. So here I put it to here, right? Like this. So there are two buttons, right? So I'll remove these rows. We don't need that. Yeah. So that's the table, right? So I remove this break tag. Then I keep the open form tag and close the form tag. So before the table, we have to have the form opening tag. So this is the form open tag. So here, form close tag. So this is the table closing tag. Now I save this and refresh. Now you can see. So this is aligned properly, right? So if you want, we can set code as 0. Then I refresh. Now we can see, right? So did you understand this? Yes or no? Did you understand
Yes,
this?
sir.
Others? Is it okay? Okay, so this is how we align input controllers with the labels. So actually, if you want, you can align this header as well. So student information. So this header can be included within the table, right? So within the table, right? So within the table, we can here. So this is the student information. So we can have this one within the table, right? So we can now say table row, and here close the table row. Here we can have some table data. So here we don't need two table data. Therefore, we can span this column into two, right? We can merge those two table data, and then here we can insert the header like this. So if it is table, it will become like this. All right. Okay. Now I refresh this. Yeah, this is the table. I align table into the center alignment, and here we have labels. Right. So here we have labels. So these are input controllers. Here we have submit and reset button. So actually, reset button means the here once if you set values, right? So like this, by using reset button, we can reset the values, right? Okay, so that's about the HTML forms, right? So we'll discuss more on this HTML forms and then how to use these things, right? So at the practical sessions, right? So don't worry about these. Keep in memory these tags, right? So don't worry about the memorize these things. So once you practice these things one or two times, it will be automatically keep in memory, right? So don't worry about the memorize all those things, right? So just what you have to do, you have to practice one by one. So that's why I discuss all the things before the practical session. So there are two or more concepts that you have to discuss. Anyway, we'll demonstrate these things at the uh, practical sessions as well, right? Okay, then after 2-3 minutes, next section will be started, right? So we can find this link for the next session. So under the uh, statistical packages, yeah. Can you see this model here? Under the statistical package, there is a link called SPSS lecture, right? So, okay, then I finish for the first session, right? So I'll end of this first session. So you can join with this SPSS lecture after 2 3 minutes, right? Okay. Thank you very much.